The cold was the first thing I noticed. Not the kind of cold that makes you pull a blanket tighter. The deep kind. The kind that gets into the walls and stays there long after everything alive has left. I noticed it the moment I stepped through the airlock and into the belly of that dead ship, and I thought to myself, yeah, this is going to be a miserable night. My name is Rael Kovac. I fly cargo for a living. Mostly legal cargo. Always independent. Which is a polite way of saying I am almost always broke. That particular evening, if you can call anything in deep space evening, I had made what I now consider the worst financial decision of my career. I had chased a fuel price report 3 relay stations off my usual route, hoping to save enough credits to finally fix the temperature regulator on my ship. The report was 6 days old by the time I reached it. The price had gone back up. I turned around, throttled hard to make my delivery window, and ran my tanks dry somewhere in a stretch of space that does not appear on any of the popular maps. My ship went quiet, emergency systems only. The transponder was running, but in that part of the galaxy, you could wait 4 days before a signal bounced off anything useful. So I did what any sensible pilot does in that situation. I looked around for options. The derelict showed up on my passive scanner about 40 minutes after I lost propulsion. It was enormous. A Vray cargo hauler, maybe 3 times the length of anything I had flown before. The Vray are a species that builds things large and then abandons them when they stop working, which I have always found deeply relatable. The ship had been dark for what my scanner estimated at somewhere between 8 and 12 years. No power signature, no heat bloom, no movement of any kind. The scanner also said, no life signs. I docked at a secondary airlock on the lower port side, ran a cable connection to siphon just enough residual power to keep my own ship warm, and then I went inside with a sleeping bag, a headlamp, 3 protein bars, and a level of optimism that I now recognize as medically inadvisable. The inside of the ship was everything I expected, and worse. The corridors were built for Vray anatomy, which means the ceilings were extremely high, and the walls curved inward in a way that made them feel like they were leaning toward you. The floors had a faint texture, almost like the surface of something biological, and my boots made a soft sound on them that I did not enjoy. Everything smelled like burnt copper, and something I eventually decided was wet stone, though I could not explain where either smell was coming from. I found a good spot in a cargo bay on the 2nd level, a wide, flat space with 3 large crates I could wedge myself between for insulation. I set up my sleeping bag, ate one of the protein bars, drank from my water tube, and turned off my headlamp to save the battery. In the dark, the ship made small sounds. Pressure adjustments, metal cooling, the kind of sounds that old empty ships make when no one has been there in a long time. I told myself that is exactly what they were. I went to sleep. I woke up because something moved at the far end of the corridor. Not a loud noise, not a crash, just a soft, rhythmic sound, like something heavy shifting its weight from one side to the other. I lay completely still in my sleeping bag and listened. It came again, from the same direction, and then it stopped. I waited a full 2 minutes. Nothing. I turned on my headlamp, pointed it at the corridor entrance, and saw exactly nothing. Empty hallway, curved walls, the faint texture of the floor. I turned the lamp off and told myself it was a pressure vent, releasing somewhere in the lower sections of the ship. I had heard similar sounds on old freighters before. Metal moves, structures settle. That is a normal thing. I went back to sleep. The second time I woke up, I did not turn the lamp on right away. I just lay there and listened. The sound was different now. Not a single movement, a rhythm, soft impacts, evenly spaced, then a pause, then a slightly different pattern. I pulled out my notepad, the small paper one I keep for when screens are not practical, and I started writing down the sounds in a kind of shorthand. Tap, tap, pause, tap, 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 long pause. Then the same sequence again, with a small variation. I filled half a page before I realized what I was looking at. It was moving. Whatever was making the sound was moving through the ship in a pattern, not random, not mechanical, patient. I put the notepad down. I picked up my headlamp. I did not turn it on yet. I thought about my options very carefully. I could go back to my ship. The airlock cable connection was still live, and if I moved quickly, I could seal myself in and wait out the transponder ping in my own hull. That was the sensible option. I almost did it. Then I thought about the temperature regulator on my ship. which was not working, and the fact that my ship's emergency power would not run the heating for more than about 18 hours. The derelict's residual battery system was keeping me considerably warmer. Leaving meant cold. Staying meant finding out what was making the sound. I have always made poor decisions when I am cold and tired. I turned on the headlamp and went looking. The claw marks were on a bulkhead near the mid-level junction. Fresh, or fresh enough. 4 parallel lines in the material of the wall, each about the length of my forearm, spaced at irregular intervals. Not a tool mark, something with actual claws. I stood and looked at them for a while, and then I moved on, because looking at them longer was not going to make them more comfortable. The maintenance hatch was at the end of a narrow corridor that branched off the main path. It was sealed, a simple mechanical lock, the kind that does not need power. The surface of it was warm, not hot, warm, like something had been pressed against the other side of it for a long time. I put my hand flat on the metal and felt it, and I thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Then I backed up 3 steps and decided I was not going to open it. That felt like the correct boundary to establish. I went back to my sleeping bag. I ate a second protein bar. I sat with my back against the largest crate, and my headlamp pointed at the cargo bay entrance, and I thought about what a scanner could miss. Old scanners, the civilian short-range kind, like mine, read heat and electrical activity. A creature that was cold-blooded, or close to it, metabolizing slowly in a sealed space with no electrical signature, in a ship that the scanner was already reading as a single large mass of dead metal, that kind of creature would blend right into the noise. A negative life sign reading was not the same as a guarantee. I was thinking about this when the maintenance hatch opened. Not loudly, not with any drama. It moved slowly, like someone who has been watching a door for a long time and has finally decided to test it. The corridor at the far end of the cargo bay was in shadow, and I could see the shape of the hatch swinging open, and then I could see what came through it. It was large, larger than I had prepared myself for, which is saying something, because I had been preparing myself for something large. It moved on 6 limbs, the front 4 functioning more like arms than legs, and its body was broad and low in the middle, and then tapered toward the back. The surface of it was dark, almost black, with a faint iridescent quality, the way an oil slick looks in sunlight. It had a wide, flat head with eyes placed far apart, each one the size and color of polished obsidian. It moved carefully, not fast. It entered the cargo bay and stopped. It looked at me. I did not move. I want to be very clear that this was not because I was calm. My heart was doing something that I am fairly certain was not medically recommended. My brain was sending extremely loud signals to my legs about the concept of running. I did not move because my body had simply decided, at a level below conscious thought, that it was not going to. I was frozen solid. The creature stared at me. I stared back at it. Several seconds passed that felt like several years. And then it was the creature that looked away first. Not because it was scared. I do not want to make that sound more dramatic than it was. It looked away slowly, almost thoughtfully, like a person who has seen something unexpected and is deciding how to categorize it. One of its forward limbs shifted, and I saw, in the beam of my headlamp, that the limb was injured. Something had sealed the wound, a dark material that had dried and hardened over the break. Improvised, done without help. It had been alone in that sealed space, hurt, for a very long time. I heard myself start talking. I am not sure when I made the decision to do it. I was just suddenly narrating, quietly and steadily, everything I was seeing. "You're hurt," I said. "That limb. You sealed it yourself. That's smart. You've been in here a while, I think. There are scratches on the bulkhead near the junction that look like they were made a while ago, probably before the more recent ones. You've been moving around this ship for a long time." My voice was flat and calm, because I had no energy left to make it anything else. The creature made a sound, very low, below the range where I could feel it in my ears, more in my chest, like a low vibration. Every part of me that was still connected to something ancient and animal said that this sound meant danger. I breathed slowly. I kept my voice even. "I hear you," I said. "I'm not going anywhere fast. Neither are you, it looks like." I found out later, much later, after a very long conversation with a xenobiologist who studied Vray-adjacent fauna, that the frequency my speaking voice lands in is almost exactly the range that this creature's species uses to signal non-aggression to rivals. Not submission, not fear, just, I am not here to take anything from you. I did not know this at the time. I was just talking because it was the only thing I could think to do. The creature settled. It did not leave. It curled its injured limb close to its body, and it sat, or did whatever the equivalent of sitting was, about 4 meters from me, in the shadows at the edge of my headlamp beam, and it watched me with those flat, dark eyes. I stayed where I was. After a while, I slowly reached into my bag and ate the last protein bar. I offered the wrapper in the creature's direction, which in hindsight was a strange thing to do, but it seemed polite. The creature did not respond. It just kept watching. I named it Old Bone, after the ship. I told myself this was probably not a good idea. I did it anyway. We sat like that for several hours. I drifted in and out of something that was not quite sleep. Old Bone did not move. When I woke up properly, gray light was coming from somewhere. A crack in the hull panels above, letting in a thin stripe of distant starlight, and Old Bone was still there. Then the ship groaned. Not the usual settling kind of groan. A deep, structural sound. The kind that means something has shifted that was not supposed to shift. The floor vibrated once, hard, and then I heard a long metallic screech coming from the aft section. A secondary power cell, I thought. Cascading failure. Old ships do this. They hold together for years and then one thing gives and takes 2 others with it. The screech got louder. I felt a change in air pressure, faint but immediate, and I knew what it meant. Something had breached. The ship was losing atmosphere in at least one section. If it was the section near my airlock. I ran. I did not make a plan. I just picked up my bag, and I ran toward the airlock corridor. Old Bone moved. Not toward me. Alongside me, in the parallel corridor that I had not known existed, visible through the gaps in the internal wall panels, keeping exact pace. It knew this ship. It had mapped every passage in 8 years of living inside it, and it was faster than me, much faster, but it matched my speed exactly, like it was waiting for something. I reached the junction before my airlock corridor. The pressure drop was there. I could hear it. A high, thin whistle coming from a panel on the left wall. Old Bone, on the other side of the internal partition, hit something. A maintenance release, I realized. A valve. The whistle dropped in pitch and then stopped. The pressure sealed. 4 minutes, maybe 5, before the bleed resumed through a secondary channel. 4 minutes was enough. I got through my airlock. I sealed it. I dragged my emergency oxygen kit back into my ship, and I sat in my cockpit and I breathed. The salvage tug was already on approach. My transponder had finally found a relay buoy, and in 30 minutes I would be out of this. I looked at the feed from my docking camera, the derelict's exterior, the airlock I had come through. Old Bone was still in there. I sat in my cockpit for 30 seconds. I counted them. Then I said several things to myself about being sensible and practical, and not putting myself in danger for a creature that was, by every reasonable measure, an apex predator who had been surviving alone in a dead ship for the better part of a decade. Then I pulled my EVA suit out of the storage locker. I grabbed the cargo net. I went back through the airlock. Old Bone was in the corridor just inside, as if it had been waiting. It watched me come in. I held up the cargo net and felt genuinely unsure how to explain what I was proposing. I pointed at it. I pointed at the net. I pointed at my ship. Old Bone looked at the net for a long moment. Then it stepped forward. Getting a 6-limbed, 2-meter creature into a standard cargo net inside a pressurizing alien ship is exactly as difficult as it sounds. By the time I had it secured and dragged through the airlock and into my cargo hold, I was out of breath and fairly certain I had pulled something in my lower back. Old Bone, once inside the hold, went still immediately. It curled its limbs in, pressed itself into the far corner, and made that low chest vibration sound again. I sealed the hold and went back to the cockpit, just as the salvage tug opened a comm channel. "Govach," the tug captain said, "my scanner is showing 1 human and something that reads like a very large and very unhappy predator. Please explain." "Stowaway," I said. "Long story. Please don't open the hold." There was a pause. The tug captain began listing regulations. I stopped listening after the 3rd one. I leaned my head back against my seat and closed my eyes. From the hold, through two sealed bulkheads, I could feel more than hear the low hum of old bones settling in for the ride. I told myself it probably meant nothing, just the sound a large creature makes when it stops moving. I chose to translate it as thank you. I closed my eyes. The tug's towing clamp connected with a solid thunk. We began to move. I woke up alive on the other side. Old Bone was still in the hold. The tug captain had filed 3 formal complaints and then quit. There were going to be a lot of conversations with a lot of officials about what, exactly, I was transporting and where it was going and whether I had the correct paperwork, which I absolutely did not. All things considered, I called it a win.